Right, boys, so where are we at since last week? So last week, we didn't take any trades at all. There was no options that presented for us. This week, 22nd to 26th of July, currently on the 25th. So we're on Thursday morning. Can probably, hands up at this point, say no trades. There could be a potential move I've got set up for the higher time frames yet. But I don't think that's coming in. That's well away from where we're at right now, at least. Let's go to the accounts. FTMO is in the exact same position. No trades taken. Alpha is evaluation phase 1. Haven't touched it. Funded phase 0 because we've got it. And then verifications phase 2. That's what I meant to say. So we've got all of these three sitting here. These two in drawdown. Obviously same thing with these two in drawdown. And I said I want to be extra careful the next trade that I take. I've looked through the week so far. I'd have been shocked if I missed any decent opportunities. That's what we're here to go through though. I just think the market has been a bit dry. This week especially has been very, very slow. Doesn't take too much to look at the DXY movement this week. At least if we were to look at candle low to candle high. You know, 46 points, 460 points. I'm not too sure exactly which one it is, but they don't do pips on these indexes. But you look at some of these lower volume weeks, we're looking at 1,000. So we're half of that. Even this small bullish candle, 700. We're not even at that yet. So I'm expecting there to potentially be a movement today. We've got advanced GDP, I think it is, quarterly. And we've got unemployment claims today. So we'll have a quick look at them and see what we're looking at. Yeah, GDP quarterly. Expected positive. We may see some good movement to finish the week. I'm just not really expecting too much. If anything, it would push GU down if we come as expected with these news events. As for GU, if we look at GU, it's very, very slow. And EU, similar. Had a very different kind of bias this week going into the week. And it made it quite confusing. And I already kind of knew from that, maybe quite hard to take trades. I've got to be careful what I take. Because I always like basing things off the DXY. So we go into the DXY this week. If we get rid of this, what can we gather from that previous week? So previous week, we broke the previous weekly low and we come into this fair value gap that we've been coming into and tapping for a while, ever since April. So really, this has been a key area of demand, if you want to call it that. I would just say that we're holding this area, and this area is just below 104 right now, which is interesting because this 104 line is something I like to see respected and held. And what you can kind of see is last week failed to break back above that. So that makes my bullish bias quite hard to take. For the bearish bias as well, it's also hard because we're clearly failing 50% of this weekly 3 times now. Therefore, I think I had to make the assumption that we're going to need a pullback to the upside. But at the minute, I wouldn't be wanting to take more further upside buys because when we come back into this, we failed to break these highs here. Therefore, once we break these lows, this kind of potential to see us come back and then go up has kind of gone in my eyes. And I'm really interested in seeing price for the rest of this year probably come back into this weekly order block at a minimum. Maybe even come and take out previous December low. That's what I'm looking at there. So week close, never get too much off that. Big rejection to the downside and a failure to break 104. Now we've got a few areas here on the weekly that we could come pull back into. This was a favored one in the way that if we broke this, this would look something like this. Comes back into the golden area, so that's quite good for a higher time frame opportunity. But this is what makes it very difficult, and I'm not too sure exactly how I feel about these just newly formed gaps, but I do know one thing, it makes it hard, especially when you're not really bullish on DXY overall. When you look at the zoomed out picture, we've been really just consolidated. So to say that we're going to see definite upside is hard to say. If anything, I'm expecting price to probably head nearer close back into that 100 level by the end of the year. With all the fundamentals and the projections for what's looking to be coming out, I just don't see why it would start coming up past these again. So after that, I could see that on the weekly here, there's nothing else to really mark up. Price could take the high, then it could continue down. Price could take this gap, fill it, continue through it, come into this one and fail. But overall, it's still quite bearish. What I would look at on the daily time frame, however, is we had this daily order block in from a previous week that we come into multiple times again during this week and failed at. So one thing I'd look to point out is with this key level, price ran down, broke this low, took out this low here. We've come back into 104, found a low, now we're pulling back. My assumption is this is key liquidity now, because with a weekly sitting right at it, right above it, it just makes so much sense for price to come and take that high, come into this weekly, and then we can see if we can fall from there. So I was thinking at a minimum, I don't want to sell DXY until we see price come and take previous weekly high. So that was kind of my rule. As for buys though, I mean, I'd buy up to it. I wouldn't then look to play past that because of the uncertainty around this area. So that's really the only opportunity I'm looking at to start the week, is buys up to that level. And that's the markup there. The daily similar. We've got a gap in the weekly here. Kind of makes that area stronger when you've got daily and weekly together. Apart from that, it's just, yeah, it's at a low point at the minute. We need to see a bit of a correction to the upside before we can create another lower high to come down. Now, as for EU, was that lining up with DXY? Kind of. It was a little bit. You know, the weekly close was weak bullish. We see a weak bearish close here. Now, it's not the strongest close. It's a large rejection to the upside. Now, you're not sure if that's an actual failure to the upside or that's potentially an order block. And the same would go for that. Is this just going to be another order block that we're going to break the high, fill into here, and then fill this wick? So that's another thing I was being very careful on. Now, weekly markup's quite easy because we come into this weekly liquidity. On the previous week, we come and took that low. So we took that high. Now, I would say the middle line at the minute has still not been taken. And with a set of liquidity, I do like it when price comes and take at least the second wick. Doesn't have to, of course. But I'd be expecting price to come back into this area at some stage after a pullback, because I would just doubt we would just hit the first line of liquidity and just drop from there. And of course, we are seeing that price is generally looking a bit more bullish recently anyway. Now, for that to happen, we obviously have remembered that there was a gap in here that we haven't come back to. So not only have you got that one there, which would be a favoured one based on this, but also we've got the higher one here, which is just newly formed as well. And I would look at this and say this isn't a weekly confirm, so I'm not going to look for higher time frame positions based on this sell, because I would say the same thing as DXY. Once we take the previous weekly low, which we can mark up here, we can see price come and take that, and then we can come and reverse back from that level. At the maximum on EU for a pullback was the weekly fill here during this week, because if we were to come down to here, I just think that would be a bit unexpected. So I was saying, okay, price can come down into this, start seeing potential upside daily candles, and then I can buy back up. That was my whole idea there. We mark up previous weekly high as well, just so we know where we're at. So I'm kind of looking for them plays to start the week on the daily time frame, because there's not really anything else to mark up here. I'm really eyeing up that liquidity within this weekly order block, and that's really it. So you can see there that also got tapped into, so you can kind of combine them together. If we go onto the daily time frame, we can see, I don't think that's still popped up. There we go. Weekly, yeah, it was weekly. So if we go onto the daily time frame, an important thing to note was what we're doing when we're trickling up here is we had very brutal force. We come up with some decent momentum to the upside. We come and took out this previous high. We come into these areas here to the left, which were, weren't they March's highs? So near and into the yearly highs there. So we weren't as high as GU on this. What I could get from this is, if this is the wick that took us down to create a new high last week and we're struggling here, then this previous weekly low becomes a massive liquidity point. I'm not going to be taking buys on EU until I see that taken. That's my rule. So I'm looking for downside on Monday, and yet we are very low. So there's something to look at here with how can you take a bit more of a counter play on Monday with there being a key liquidity point and a potential way to get caught in these legs. These legs can be quite deceiving, especially on a Monday. You need to be careful about where you choose to put in your potential options. But I was looking for downside based on that aligning with DXY needing to come up. And then GU, bit different. A little bit different. I think the difference is that it's hard to say, because this area is clear-cut a obvious order block, still not been broken. So this weekly is the rejection, the failure. If we've failed at a weekly, we've got a clear bearish candle, which ended up being about 50 pips on the body with a large rejection wick to the upside. This to me, based on also looking at this, would make sense for price to come into this massive gap here, which was better I think on EU, you could also say that was a good area. But I think with GU, it just looked like we had a lot more room to correct. The reason being is, and this is where we can look at the differences between the two pairs, is that if this is your March high, it may even be your current yearly high, you've took that already, and you're not only taking it, you're 150 pips above it. We're still not even near the yearly high. The yearly high is still way over here on EU. So we've got a long way to go, which means we're a lot lower in EU, which means there's less likely chances we're going to see significant pullbacks. If we just put in current yearly high, we can get an idea of how we're set up on EU compared to GU. So we're way overextended potentially on GU. Therefore, I'd be expecting a further pullback, which means that, yep, we could also see failures within this gap. But I would, at a bare minimum, want to see 50% of this filled. So what I do is if this is going to maybe taint your ideas for the week, is that I'll mark in 50% and I'll mark in the low. And then we know where 50% and the low are. So we could do this, 50% weekly FVG. Oh, it's not 50%, that's the low in it. So we've got the low of the weekly fair value gap, and then we've got 50%. That just makes it less harder when you go down the time frames to see where you're actually at. There we go. Now we've got these marked in, probably take this off. So what I'd say with this is that where this aligns differently to EU is, obviously this is pretty good to come down minimum 50%. If not, really looking for the weekly fill before we get a bit more upside on this. I would also say that at this point, yep, okay, maybe I haven't seen another candle come down. I'd mark this in as a POI, as a weekly unmitigated wick. That's just what I like to do. Probably to come back into this, fail, and then come down. So in the case of GU, I have got a weekly confirmation. I am looking for that downside, right? Therefore, how does this look differently on the daily time frame? Because we haven't really got anything else to mark up. We know we're in this weekly order block here. On the daily, the wick here, which was this wick on EU, was already taken. We're already lower. Again, gives the opportunity that this previous weekly low, which will come into the week, has got no relevance at all compared to what EU does. There's no way I can take a sell to start the week, which means that if I'm looking for more of a higher time frame position because of the weekly confirm that I've got, I'm going to be eyeing up this daily. I'm going to be looking for a higher time frame play somewhere within this. You've got a order block with a fair value gap. Now I'm just going to look at the order block, and somewhere within there, I think there's a pretty nice POI. So I'm looking to hot zone this up. We've got a pretty nice order block in here, and you can see that the problem with this area is it's so big, such a big area within the daily, the weekly. You're looking at 75 pips. So you've got pick out what is the most likely area price will come into before we come down. This order block's okay. I think you could look for that, but I would rather point out what's the best, and that lines up with the wick. This wick took out these highs to the left as well, so it's looking down your time frames, understanding what are the best POIs. I think the 3 hour pretty nice because it left a very decisive candle pushing down, which eventually took out this buy leg. This looks good. This looks good. So we've got the daily within the weekly. I'm not too sure why these aren't coming up. Maybe I've gone the higher time frames. Yeah, it's just bugging out at the minute. But what I'd look at is go, okay, what am I expecting? I'm expecting GU to do something like this. The annoying thing about this is, and I don't normally look at this too much, it's not really lining up the DXY. DXY, I want a short-term buy for a further sell down. With GU, I'm looking for the sells down, really. I'm looking for a short-term buy on the same thing on GU, but then to see the downside, which would align with DXY, which doesn't really make sense. For that to be a thing that happens, we're going to have to see the pound be weaker than the dollar. If the pound is not going to be weaker than the dollar, we're just going to see GU go up, straight up. Ultimately, if we want to see that GU downside and see the DXY still go down, we're going to have to see a pretty weak pound. And with that news event that came out yesterday, the PMI there, we saw that come out somewhat neutral, a little bit positive, which wasn't the best to see that big push down. Whereas EU, we did get a further downside move this week because of the negative print on the numbers there, which were expected positive as well. So we're keeping in mind that what I want to see is a low to be formed here and a correction to then sell to get our decent correction pullback from the higher time frame push up, which a lot of that was CPI. There was loads of pound news that just affected this GU pair, which made it move so much more than EU. So if we're looking at a potential option here, I went for two. I went for one, something quite small. I went for one to cover near this entry. If we come straight and tap the weekly wick / daily, I want an entry off of that. If we come up and we come into this, then I want an entry off this. I think I went for about a bit of a smaller stop loss. I wasn't expecting price to have an issue there. I think we're even looking at around 4R. 25 pip stop out on that. So if I'm going to look at why this area is so important, is it's got the best POI within half the daily, half the weekly, and you could even say half the 3 hour. But we're going to get in at the start of the 3 hour. And that's really all we're looking for. And if we were to look at this potential leg, which was, we decided it was up here from here, we're right bang on the golden area, the bang on the golden zone, the golden goose. Perfect entry really for that play. So we had a bigger R for that. I'm not expecting price to come and take the high. That high should be held if we're going to see price run down because of it tapping into that weekly. We shouldn't need to come higher. Just don't think that would make sense. The wicks well into 50, 75 pips. So that were the two higher time frame options there on GU. And pretty much going into Monday then was looking at EU sells, was looking at DXY coming up. So we'll have a look at how that looked because I haven't really shown you last week how I was setting up. But I think that's because there was actually no plays that I set up for. Whereas in this week, there were plays I set up for, but they just didn't manage to come in. So we go on to the day here and we see what Asian did because Asian did do quite a fair bit. I don't think I have the Asian session range here. It's a bit annoying. Have I got it here? Have I got it? Let's have a look. Yep, course it loads. Course it loads. Just when I need it the most. Alright, it doesn't matter too much. What we're looking for, we got the Asian session range here. I'm looking for a break. I'm looking for a break of this range. Let's do that. And if we're looking at where the legs are, I think you've got this leg here, which was Friday's latest leg. This is a consolidation. I don't like that. Then the next area on the 1 hour, you'd be going all the way back to up here. So this is your leg you're in on the 1 hour. Again, are we going to pull back massively there? My whole idea is not like GU to come up and then come down. My whole idea on EU is to come down, come up. So I'm looking for a sharp pullback and a quick move down. Not expecting price to run all the way into these areas. Therefore, I've gone on a 30 minute and made the 30 minute leg up. And we can see how we've got this leg instead. So now I'm looking at this area. I'm looking at where has price not come into yet. We've got this area here. I think I've marked in this area. Up in here. We're looking at price running into this area for a sell. Pretty nice 1 hour gap there because it was the first one on this move down. And was looking for this play. This play here. About 3R. And you can see here towards the end of the day. Just didn't come anywhere near. We still failed to take this low out though. That was an interesting point. Still failed to take this low out. So we did kind of dawdle around here a little bit. And then I've took this entry off. And then coming into the next day, let's have a look again. Because DXY did not do anything either. So I'm still looking for upside. I'm still looking for downside. And remember I said earlier that I wasn't looking for buys on EU. Because until we take this, why would price go up? I just don't see why that would happen. So I'm still looking at this being an order block for us to come down or at least take the lows out, flip bullish after. That really just gives me the same idea and the same play. What I don't like about all this though is we're starting to build up a range. Yep, we may have a new leg from here to here. But what is this? This is it's just a range. We've come and took the high out and took the low out, come back in the range. There's no decisiveness. Therefore, coming into the next day with Asian, I'm just really waiting for the similar idea that I want to use this leg on the 30. Where is it? Still up here, wasn't it? It looks ridiculous now. It's been a few days. Now gone for that being the leg. And wanted to see price run back into higher areas and have this as an inducement level. What we didn't end up doing was that. And we ended up holding this leg. And we saw price run there, 4 in the morning. So I had no chance of getting in, even if I did have that as a leg. You can see that this here is where the play come off. So if you're an Asian, you caught that, you've done really well. Frustrating one because we don't normally see the moves come in an Asian. and that just played out perfectly there. Was one of them days and one of them weeks where Asian done all the movement, because you could even look at this move from Monday morning, and this come up into this leg perfectly as well. So that's why you've not been able to get your options, is because you've been able to keep that sell idea going with the trend without giving you that entry and where you wanted it. And sometimes that's the way it goes. So we're going to have to miss that one out. And we look at price coming into that target. Nice. So we come into that target and continue down. Wasn't what I was expecting really, but didn't get caught out in that, which is good. As for GU, how we started the week, as I say, I'm not going to be looking to sell here because I'm waiting for price to come up. And let's see what we do. Monday closes bullish. Why am I not going to buy? There's a few reasons really. One, because we've come into this. I don't really think price has rejected off this gap yet. Price has tapped it. I don't see a rejection. If this candle come and broke below and back into this daily, I would have said, yeah, you know what, it's worth a go. Didn't do that, so I'm going to let that go and go, okay, could this just be an order block to come deeper before we end up coming to pull back? So like down, up. So again, I decided to stay out of that. I'm quite happy I did, because I think when you get that warped sometimes psychology of being down a few trades, these are the kind of days that you try and force a buy move on. And I didn't think it made sense anyway, even if you go onto the 1 hour here, coming into the day, it really didn't make sense to be trying to buy, because like, where is your leg to be buying from? There's not really any good POIs, and again, like I said on EU, it just ranged. So we saw Tuesday just go by there and come down, which would have took any buy move out. So very glad I stayed out of that. Coming into Wednesday now, I mean, these are looking unlikely, these higher time frames. We can see that DXY did that. So like, nice, you know what, now we've taken that. The problem we've got is EU's closed down like this. Can't buy it. We filled the weekly as well. Oh no, we haven't filled the weekly. We nearly filled the weekly. So I can't sell because I'm not going to play past that liquidity point, and then I can't really buy. So again, I've got to sit out of the market, and we end up filling it and continuing through the weekly. That leaves me with no options really. Today I had no option to sell or buy, because ultimately I'm looking for upside. If I'm not going to get a daily confirm to get a good leg off on the 1 hour to sell or buy, then how am I supposed to be trying to get a sell on this? Makes no sense. Wednesday on DXY closed bearish with a wick. I don't think that looked bad, right? If we saw EU respectively close bullish and fail at the low of this weekly, that would have been my shout for a buy. But this did not close good. This didn't close bad. It's more that EU didn't close good. They're both closing bearish. What does that show? Just shows the euro. It's just really struggling this week, to be honest. Really struggling. And we haven't seen quite the same for GU. Tuesday we close like this. You might say, are you going to look for a buy from this? Well, no, because the body's very big. There's no rejection wick. There's just no move. And that's what I love about my strategy. That's personally why I made my strategy so affected by the daily candles. And I base everything off, can I trade this day based on the daily close or can I not? Because it leaves everything else out of the question. There's no fiddling around on the lower time frames. There's no manual entries. It's always you're setting alerts based on a confirm that is a good day to trade. Otherwise, you just have to wait for the next daily candle. And it's really that simple. With Wednesday's close there, took the high, took the low, indecisive doji. Okay, what have we... This is the big question within this area. What have we done differently on this day and this day to make us want to buy that we haven't already seen from that wick? We haven't tapped into 50% of the daily. We haven't filled the daily gap. We haven't tapped 50% of the weekly. It is just no trades for me. No trade at all. I don't see anything. And I'm happy with that. I'm really happy to stay out. It's been 2 weeks. I've never stayed out of the market for 2 weeks like this. And it feels good. It feels like I'm learning. I'm growing. I'm understanding what I don't want to take. And really looking back at the week and have gone, has this been a good week? No. Would I take any trades? Have I missed anything? Also no. Nothing is standing out to me that I should be taking. And I don't trade Fridays. And I am expecting DXY to come down. If we see a close like this week, I think we're good to go for downside. I think EU needs to see some more But again, we have still have a day and a half to go. That's the reality of it. Still have a while to go yet on these pairs. So we're looking good. We're looking very good. And I think, yeah, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say to end the video. There's a lot of lessons to be learnt from July before these 2 weeks come in for me. So I've learned all I needed to, really. And you can only learn so much is what price gives you. But I've been doing a lot of work in the background. Still been trying to find ways to improve the edge a little bit more. And that's just going to help me moving forward. I'm going to be able to take more winning trades, stay out of worse trades, keeping on top of fundamentals and making sure everything's all sweet. So once again, I hope some of you guys did take some trades and did manage to take some trades. But look, don't take trades if they don't come available. And I'm trying to show you that this is what I look for. This is my criteria. And it hasn't been met, so I don't trade. If it does get met, I do trade. There's not really too much else to it. And sometimes you're just not going to make money for periods. And the way I'm trying to view it is, if I want to be a full-time trader, and there is going to be a month or two where I don't take any trades, now my mindset starts moving to, okay, you're going to need some money set aside outside of your trading account, outside of your funded accounts, that you can sit there and use as your real life day-to-day spending, rent, car money, travel money, whatever you do, that needs to be there, and you need to be happily using that without there being trades in the market, because the problem with trading always comes in when you don't have the money. You need that money to live. Well, that's going to make you take trades that aren't even existing. So for me, my idea is now, like, how much do I need to try and accumulate before I can go and live that life? Have 2 months or 3 months, no trades. No trades, no worry. And that's going to be hard for a lot of traders to grasp their heads around, but that's the way I'm trying to think about it moving forward, how I can really keep my edge and sometimes not take any trades and still be able to happily live my life, not stressing about why I'm not getting any wins or losses. It's really just about what presents, and you have no control over what presents. Always the market, that will decide it for you, and you just have to react and respond to that. So yeah, take care guys, see you next week. I hope we get a nice trade to finish the line. It'll all be worth the wait. But we'll see. We're going to next month strong. I'll see you guys then. Take care. Peace out.